Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. Gain valuable insights by attending the podcast, then complete the assessment test to download your certificate. To do this, follow these simple steps. Click on the link in your description to access the session. Create a free account and attend the podcast. After the podcast, take the assessment test and download your certificate. It's easy, and it's free. We highly recommend checking out our subscription. Let's get started.
What are some of the most transformative changes you have observed so far with the adoption of AI in accounting?
So I don't think it's adopted yet, right? And when I say the adoption, to me, the adoption means that everybody would be using it, right? And we're not there. Not everybody is using it. There's still a lot of people skeptical of using it. But I think the way to look at it is, I was at Engage, and that's the biggest show that the AICPA puts on.
Yes.
And if you walked around the showroom floor, I would say, I don't know, at least 20% of the vendors that were there were marketing AI as part of their solution that they were selling.
If I step back and I look at a bigger picture, how do you envision AI and radical pricing influencing the competitive dynamics in the accounting sector?
So I start with, how do you build 2 minutes? How do you build 2 seconds? So if you don't figure out how to incorporate pricing into whatever it is you're selling, as AI being a component of it, you're never going to make any money. So I was at a session at Engage, and I was quite embarrassed by the question, but we'll just go with it. Someone asked that they were doing some sort of consulting, and it would normally take them 8 hours, and it took them 2 because they used AI to help them. And they said, should they put AI on the bill? No, you don't put AI on the bill. And what are you going to bill AI at? $60 an hour or something? And then you're gonna multiply it by 2 seconds. No, you're not gonna put AI on the bill. So if you can't figure that out, that you need to charge on outcomes, first of all, read my book, I'll help you.
Yeah.
But that's the shift that has to happen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of our favorite podcast, We're Trying to Figure Out with Saul, where we explore the latest innovations and trends in the industry. I'm Saul, your host for today, and I'm thrilled to have you all with us. Today, we have a very special guest, Jody Padar, known widely as the Radical CPA. Jody is a pioneering visionary in the accounting profession, consistently named among the top 100 most influential people by accounting today. She is the author of the upcoming book, Radical Pricing, as well as the Radical CPA, New Rules for the Future-Ready Firm, and From Success to Significance, the Radical CPA Guide. Currently, she serves as a senior tax advisor at April, where she continues to champion the integration of AI and automation into the accounting world. In this episode, we'll delve into how AI and Jody's innovative concept of radical pricing are redefining the accounting landscape. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Jody, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's really good to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, your new book, Radical Pricing, is creating quite a buzz. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write it.
So what inspired me to write it is, I think the whole idea of pricing is the fundamental shift of the business model that has to happen to CPA firms today. So if you think about why firms are struggling with product market fit, and when I say that, not everyone talks in technology terms, so they might not understand that, but basically CPAs for a long time have felt like what they're delivering to their clients or their customers is not working, right?
Right.
There's too much friction in what CPAs are selling to their customers. And you can see it on the other side because customers are not happy, right? Customers are they're complaining about response times, they're complaining about prices, they're complaining about all these things. And CPAs are kind of doing the same thing that they've done for the last 40 years. And there's this friction and they don't understand why. And I would argue that it's because our pricing model has to shift, but it's not just our pricing, it's the fundamental thing that pricing impacts the rest of the firm. And
Right.
that's the practice management around it. So what it means is, yes, you have to change your pricing that's going like that's outward facing, but it also means you have to change how you deliver services, the technologies that you use to deliver services, how you productize a service offering, which is what technology companies call it, but basically getting your inputs and your marketing aligned so that it meets where the customer is today, and
Right.
essentially changing your firm. So when I say like it fundamentally affects every area of your firm, when I began my firm years ago, I just like intuitively started pricing differently when I started using new technologies.
Right.
And I didn't realize why so many firms had such a problem with it. It was because the pricing is just one piece of the whole business model that has to change with your firms. And that's what people don't understand. And that's why when they go and they put menu pricing on, I'll say, a traditionally old school firm, it doesn't work and it breaks. And people are like, oh, like I lose my shirt when I go to fixed pricing, right? Like that's the most common response. Well, it's because you didn't change everything else that has to change. It's not just setting a price up front, it's making sure that everything is systematized in the back so that it's not like this chaos, and
Yeah.
that you know what you're selling and you're marketing it as such. And it's a holistic approach to practice management. So
Very
that was a
interesting.
long answer, but
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna let you go because I would really want to dive more into this radical pricing concept, because it sounds really interesting and it seems that this is something that's going to be reshaping the traditional financial models in accounting, right? So, I am always curious to know what really prompted you to develop this new pricing model and how is the industry responding to it so far?
so I'll say I didn't think it up. I iterated through it.
Uh-huh.
So if you know my background at all, I owned a firm for 14 years before I sold it in 2020. So in 2010, I was that early cloud adopter who
Yeah.
iterated through what a lot of people call a new firm today, right? Like we were doing fixed fee pricing, we were using all the cloud technologies, we were using social media, we were really thinking through our processes. So a lot of people call it like the modern firm or the new firm today. Well, we were doing it in 2010. So that's my background. It came from actually doing the work, not from like just coming up and saying, oh, I'm going to be a pricing consultant and I'm going to like tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
I made all the mistakes. I did it wrong, but I learned and I iterated through it. And so that was like my firm in like 2010. And then like I sold it in 2020 and I went to work for BotKeeper. And then I worked for BotKeeper for 2 years. And then I worked at, well, I'm still at April, and we're building tax software from the ground up, and nobody's built tax software in 30 years, right? So when
Yeah.
you think about like all that innovation, but now if you take kind of the owner of a firm, right, what that means, and then you take my technology background and what it means to sell a product in a SaaS world, right,
Yeah.
and you marry those together, it makes sense that I would have the opportunity to write the book, to say everything that I've learned along the way, and to help practitioners really put all the pieces together. Because again, people have been talking about, I mean, Ron Baker, I love Ron Baker to death. He's like the pricing guru, but
Right.
he didn't build a firm using pricing. He talks up here philosophically about, the value we add and all that stuff. And he's amazing, but let's actually put it to work in a firm and see how you make mistakes and iterate through them and figure out all the other things that have to change, not
Yeah.
just say, oh, I'm going to charge $1,000 a month or whatever, like many of the other people who sell pricing do, but they've never actually done it. They've never actually done the work, and they don't understand how it all has to kind of come together. And that's why my book's different, and that's why my perspective's different.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. And how do you see this radical pricing aligning with the broader trends that are happening in the accounting profession right now?
So I would argue it's the only way. I would
Uh-huh.
argue that the billable hour is going to be dead.
Uh-huh.
It's going to go via way of Blockbuster,
Mm-hmm.
and you can either choose to be on board or choose not to. When you look at the technology that's happening in the workplace, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you look at AI, I used to always say, how do you build 2 minutes? And that was with cloud technology. Well, how do you build 2 seconds? You don't. You
Oh,
you
yeah.
you can't build 2 seconds. And
Right.
so if you can't build 2 seconds, now you have to say, okay, what am I selling? What's the outcome? What's the value connected to it? And how am I going to price it? And why CPA firms think they are so different. Every other company has figured out how to price something. Why CPA firms think they can't set a price up front is
Right.
beyond me. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It's only CPAs and attorneys who still bill by the hour. Everybody else, even the plumber, sets a fee and tells you how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So why CPAs think they're special is it doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense from the standpoint of if you're selling time, you're limited to so many hours in the day, right? Like, I mean, though
Right.
I have heard of people who have double billed stuff. So like,
Yeah.
like don't put it past them
Right.
to build two things at the same hour.
Yeah.
But if you're still selling time, you're limited to how many hours you have in a week to bill.
Absolutely.
If you're pricing and you're selling on outcomes, your sky's the limit on opportunity on how much money you can make in your firm. And I believe you could make $1 million per full-time equivalent. I believe that is not far away based on all the automations and AIs that's coming. And if you choose not to change, so be it. But everybody else is changing and the world has changed around you, which is why I would say people feel the friction, but they can't figure out why it's not working anymore. And a lot of it too has to do with the customer, right? Like the customers expect an Amazon experience,
Yep.
and like CPA firms are not delivering that way. Like, okay, so you reach out to someone on the website and then it takes them a day to get back to you, maybe 2 days. Then you
Yep.
talk to them. Then you haven't done it, and everyone is expecting to put it in their cart, check out and go.
Yep.
And we're unfortunately, we've been given tools that haven't necessarily kept up with the world around us. But on the other side of it, most CPAs are so caught in the world of busy that they're not changing to adjust to it. So if you're so busy that you can't look at the world and the market around you to say, hey, I need to change what I'm doing to serve my customer better, because ultimately they pay our bill, then who's at fault here? And I would argue it's the CPA, because there are CPAs who have started to change. They may be less than 10% of the population, but you can't
Absolutely.
say that nobody's doing it. I mean, there
Yep.
are definitely CPAs who are doing it. So now the question is do you want to be a CPA who's figuring it out and moving? Or do you want to stay, I'll say old school, and see what comes and see if you're relevant in, 5 years? Because I would argue you're probably not going to be relevant.
Yep, yep. Well, change is the only constant in life, correct? And if my memory serves right, I think I read this on your LinkedIn that the only thing certain in life is death and taxes.
Yeah.
Do you want to earn CPE credit? Take this course of MyCPE 1 to earn free credit. Click the link in the description to get started.
So yeah, so that's there. But anywho, let's shift our focus to AI. All right. So how is artificial intelligence currently being employed within accounting technologies, and what impact does it have on our daily tasks?
So it is. Now, it's not widely distributed. I would say there are still like firms who won't even touch it, have quote unquote banned it, right? They're saying, no, don't. But the smart firms are starting to explore and use it. And then there's AI in all sorts of software that you're using today that you don't even know that there's AI in it, right? Like AI is kind of trendy and is kind of a buzzword, right? But there is a lot of AI happening in our machine learning as well, right? Kind of the beginnings of AI, right? So I think too, there's kind of that description. What is truly AI? Are you talking like kind of chat GPT and kind of this LLMs where you're like prompting things? But there's also machine learning and stuff happening behind the scenes in Intuit QuickBooks that we've been using for years and nobody even like realizes it's there, right? It's just kind of happening behind the scenes, or it's happening on LinkedIn or in your marketing, like the algorithms. And like even when you think about Netflix, right? Like Netflix uses an algorithm to show you what movie you might want to watch next, right? Like that's the basis that people say, oh, I don't want to do AI. Well, do you watch Netflix, right? Like it's already there, right? So I think we have to think bigger picture, right? Like what are we really talking about? And then I think you can kind of bucket it, right? So there's tools out there like BotKeeper. There's tools out there that are using AI already, even like in Sage Intacct and Intuit, right? Like it's already kind of categorizing transactions for us or helping us, right? And those are tools that are gonna continue to evolve and get better. And what it means for an everyday practitioner is it means instead of looking at 500 transactions, you only have to look at 10. Right. And so it pops the exception and you're going to review the exception and see if it makes sense or not. Right. There's even new tools like Puzzle that even like do it even faster or they have, I'll say, a more sophisticated look to them. Right. So there's tools like that we're already using today, or like, and maybe we don't realize it, or maybe we do realize that there's like AI built in them. But then there's this whole new world of this chat GPT, or like these, like I built my own bot, right? Like I have a radical CPA bot, right? Where it's basically querying chat GPT and like you can ask it something and it will give you some sort of response back, right? Now as a CPA, you have to double check all of this stuff. Like there's Blue Jay tax, Ask Blue Jay 2 is really like a good formal tax research software where like it gives you back all the regs and rulings and you can double check everything and then create a memo, right? Like, but those are using these new LLMs like that came from OpenAI and like, and some firms are open and starting to explore them and some firms aren't. But I would argue too, it's like, and this is going to date me, but back in the day when they used to say you can't use the internet to do your work, it's the same thing. The people who have figured out that using the internet gets them the answer faster so they can work less are the same people who are figuring out how to use ChatGPT or one of these other solutions to do their work faster and figure it out. Now, the hard part is you have client data and you have privacy and you have those kinds of issues. But like anything else, like these rules are going to evolve and you have to be smart. And most CPAs are smart. I mean, I think there are probably young CPAs. You probably need to kind of restate, hey, look, don't put any client data out there. You need to do, but if you can like feed a bank statement into a ChatGPT and have it come back with totals, like that's pretty cool, right? And there are CPAs out there who are playing with these models and just asking, they're coming up with prompts to ask them things and they're getting the response that is helping them do their work faster. And that is what we should be embracing and thinking about and learning about and exploring. And there's no like, we're at the place in the world where it's changing so fast that if you look up something today, in 2 months there may be 7 other solutions to do that exact same thing. So like it's just moving that quickly, but what you have to have is the curiosity to go figure it out and like I'll say play with it to see how it's going to help you do things. And for those of you who are a little bit more reserved or scared, right? All the vendors today, they're building it into their solutions because again, it's like a new technology that now they can incorporate into their enterprise solutions. So like, I know like Canopy has something like embedded, like they're all putting it inside anyway. So like, if you're a little bit like sheepish and you're afraid, wait 6 months and I guarantee every big vendor on a showroom floor, like will have some sort of thing that's AI, whether it's truly AI or not, they'll be marketed as AI, like that it's going to solve all your problems.
No, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.
Well, when I got exposed to ChatGPT, I mean, not that AI is a foreign term. Everybody knew about it. We've also seen the movies, AI will take over the
Right.
world and so forth and everything. And many years back, I think it was Microsoft Excel who had this thing called Clip It. It's like
Right.
yeah, and it will like prompt you things and it will tell you things and everything. And back then it was really animative.
And that was AI.
And
That
that
was
was AI.
AI.
Yeah. And we all loved it. We all loved it. In fact, everybody missed it when they took it out. They're like, oh no, Clip It is no more. But eventually it is, and like you rightly said, some of the accounting softwares have already started adopting it, and we probably don't know that we've already been using it. Like you mentioned QuickBooks, because if my memory serves right, QuickBooks also has like you could earlier create rules based on certain kind of transactions to determine what kind of an expense or income it is. Eventually, what it's doing is it's catching on to it, and then it's just able to continue to do that. So, like you rightly said, instead of reviewing 1,000, it's just reviewing those 10 exceptions or whatever it may be. And I couldn't agree more to your point as well, wherein you're able to feed it to AI and AI is able to give you information. In fact, the very same thing was talked about. I was talking to this other gentleman called Rob Valdez. We did a podcast earlier on audit and AI, and he was telling the same thing that there are softwares out there wherein today you could have the AI review it for you, and you could actually ask out for the anomalies, and it could actually list it out to you. So, it is phenomenal, and it is time that we have to adopt. It is there. It's not a question of whether you can adopt it or not. I think it's right everywhere, right? So, but anyway, you have been in the market for so long, and it's kind of like you got your finger on the pulse with what's happening in the industry. So I would definitely want to know more from you, from your experience. What are some of the most transformative changes you have observed so far with the adoption of AI in accounting?
So I don't think it's adopted yet, right? Like, and when I say the adoption, like to me, the adoption means that everybody would be using it, right? And we're not there. Not everybody is using it. There's still a lot of people skeptical of using it. But I
Right.
think the way to look at it is I was at Engage,
Mhm.
and that's the biggest show that like the AICPA puts on.
Yes.
And if you walked around the showroom floor, I would say, I don't know, at least 20% of the vendors that were there were marketing AI as part of their solution that they were selling.
Nice.
And I'm sure it's even greater because some people just aren't marketing it, right? Like it's just not in there. But that's a fundamental difference that's happening now, is that money, so there's venture capital coming into the space as well. But
Yes.
money for our private equity, I'm sorry, there's private
Yeah.
equity coming into the space as well, right?
Right.
But money from venture capital is being spent on tools that are going to be sold to the accounting space.
Right.
And that has never really happened before. There was maybe one or two vendors. I would say out of that showroom floor,
Mhm.
there were probably 10 plus vendors that are like quote unquote true startups that have VC capital behind them that
Yep.
are actively looking to sell into the accounting market. That is a fundamental shift to our market. And what that means is, if you think about who our legacy providers have always been, you've always had Intuit, Thompson, and WK. Pick your poison, like they're all been around for 30 years. They innovate very slowly, and you get what you get, and that's it. There's very little, it's the innovation is very incremental, if that, right? Like it
Yep.
is what it is, and that's all you get.
No,
Now, and again, they're big vendors. What is like, and they have thousands of employees. It's not like they're small companies, and they
Yep.
have thousands of things that they sell too. It's not like they just sell tax. Like
Yep.
WK sells healthcare, and Thompson sells legal, and Intuit
Yep.
sells, small bit, right? Like they're all huge companies, so they don't move fast, right?
Yeah.
But these startups all have venture capital behind them, and they're innovating and coming in fast with new technologies. And that's different. So I think that's what we have to think about. And it's a good thing. Because again, hopefully, well, what'll happen is either they'll get enough adoption and they'll get more funding, which is what they need, right?
Yep.
To keep iterating,
Yep.
or they'll get acquired by one of the big companies, which may be good, may be bad, right? Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can go there. But
Yeah.
but never before have we had the money and the innovation in our space. And to
Right.
me, that's the excitement. It's not the AI itself. Like, again, that the technology is the technology, but like if we can take these vendors and they can look at our market with a different set of eyes, a fresh set of eyes, and
Yep.
come up with new tools to help us do our jobs better,
Yep.
that's exciting, not just bolting on something to some software that was built 20 years ago and saying it's new. So, so to me, that's the good stuff. And
Yeah.
that's never happened before. Like,
Yeah.
and again, I've been kind of in this technology space for a while, and like, every now and then we get one new entrant. Like I think Dex came in years ago, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
BotKeeper came in and whatever. But now, like seriously, half the showroom, it was all like these innovative startups like trying to do something, which means there's an opportunity, right? So like, and that's why the money's coming. So when you think about why the money's coming into our marketplace today, it's
Yeah.
because we're so old school.
Mhm.
And they see the opportunity to change, because when you
Absolutely.
put technology on, and I'll say absolutely a broken business model, because I'm telling you pricing is the new business model, right? But if
Yeah.
you put technology on an old broken business model and you bring money into the space and nothing's changed for 30 years, now all of a sudden there's an opportunity to make a lot of money. And
Yeah.
that's why the VC are here, because they want to make money, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what their bet is, right?
Yep.
And private equity's coming in because they want to make money, right?
Yep.
So, some people are looking at it and saying, oh, it's bad, it's bad. But like for me, when there's money, tech, and broken business models, now is your opportunity for innovation. And at the end of it, someone's going to win.
Yep.
And like, hopefully, fingers crossed, like the money that comes in is going to make our lives as accountants better, so that when we come out of it, we're not working 80 hours a week, which I like, again, that's part of what I preach about, but we're
Yeah.
not working a bazillion hours a week. We're
Yep.
still profitable, and we
Yep.
can serve our clients better, because ultimately that should be what keeps us going.
Yep.
And if we can do that, and we do it, I'll say, with someone else's money, right? Like, isn't the industry as a whole going to end up winning in 5 years? Like, and if we don't, right, what's left? If we don't embrace it, if we don't help them, if we don't make the change as they change, don't think that Blockbusters are going to be around anymore, right? Like, so we can say, oh, we're brick and mortar, we're not going to change, blah, 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 right? Or we can embrace all these new tools and the money and say, okay, how do we help move everything forward?
Yep.
And we can all be successful, or we can like dig our heels in and say, we're not going to change,
Yep.
and we can just die, which maybe that's what we want to do. Hopefully most of those firms died during the pandemic with when they didn't change, which a lot of them did. A lot of them said, I'm not going remote, and
Yep.
they just closed, right?
Yes.
So if
Yes.
you could make your changes during the pandemic, which I would argue was the perfect test of showing us what it was to be a financial first responder, and to be able to move on a dime and to change and to shift.
Yep.
And so many firms, even though they were forced into it, they came out, and they came out profitable, and they came out ahead, and
Yep.
they've been through it. Look back at that and say, look, we did it. we can do this too. And I think that's what we need, that kind of that go get them, that like, we can do hard stuff and we can make these changes and we can end out on top, and we don't have to be so scared of it. Because if we don't go in with that mindset, then we're gonna like kind of wilter and die. And I don't want like firms to die. Like I say a lot of this, I don't know, kind of aggressively, but
Yeah.
I don't want firms to die. I want us to serve our customers, which I believe most CPAs want to do. They
Yep.
just haven't been taught how to do it, and they haven't had the tools to do it the way that they should, because the market has moved much faster than the legacy vendors in our space, and you can only move as fast as those legacy vendors. So if they're not innovating, you're kind of stuck, because again, it's like pick your poison. You have three softwares to choose from.
Yep. All right, that's interesting. Well, I'm going to put you a little bit on a spot here because you talked so much on AI. Do you think AI is more of a complement or is it a competitor to the traditional accounting roles?
So I think it's not, we don't know what we don't know yet. And I think what we do today is not going to be what we do tomorrow. And so, so if you think about social media, I think that's another good like historical perspective. I got in social media in 2009 and everybody told me not to be on Twitter. I can't give tax advice. I can't do social media. Now, if you look at my brand, it is social media driven. And I am one of the biggest influencers in the space. And if you would have told me that then, everybody told me don't go on social media, right? And if you look at marketers who use social media, they were all like confused, not sure how it was going to, they thought, oh my God, I'm going to like lose my job. Social media is going to take over, blah, blah, blah. What's the reality of social media today? It's 1/10 of what true marketers do.
Absolutely.
And now there's specialists in social media who only do social media. And like, there's even like, you know, I don't want to say a master's, but there's like super like people who only do social media and that's their particular everything, right? And so when you look at that, right, everyone thought the same thing was going to happen with social media. Again, I've been around long enough to kind of go through these doom and gloom like cycles that everyone wants to tell you about technology. Oh, it's going to be the worst thing in the world, right? Somehow we're all still standing. Somehow we all adapt. And so now, like, think about that, right? So I'd say, so in five, and I don't think it's going to be 10 years. I think it's by 2030, things are going to be significantly changed. We're going to have a different job. Now, we're still going to use our minds. We're still going to need the language of business and the understanding of accounting and tax and the ability to make complex things simple. But our day-to-day is not going to look anything like it is today. And I actually think it's a good thing, because they say there aren't going to be any CPAs. If you listen to anyone, they say like they're all dying or nobody's going to be a CPA, right? Like they're saying the pipeline is like, you listen to everybody, it's like doom and gloom. Like we're not going to have enough CPAs, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Hopefully technology will come in and change it and make a difference. And we will do what we're meant to do. We just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And every new technology, ever since it started. In fact, when you mentioned social media, you said that, you rightly said, marketers are incorporating it into the strategy significantly today, almost every business. In fact, there are businesses for whom social media is the only market. Like that's where they are, there's no other place that they are. But with every new technology, there's always comes a set of challenges, right? So what are the main obstacles you see in embracing AI into the established accounting firms?
So I think the hard part is, and I'll go back to the business model.
Yes.
Partnership business models are very difficult because you have 7 partners and they all have to agree on something for change to happen. And the small firms can adopt very easily because it's 1 or 2 decision makers. And the large firms can adopt because they have committees and departments who are going to basically say like, I've reviewed all of this and this is the tool we're going to use, right? Like, and they're going to make that decision for the whole firm, right? Like, let's just say a top 20 firm, right? Like those, it's the people in the middle who get lost, because all those firms in the middle, they can't make a decision, so they don't act. And that's their biggest problem today, which is why they haven't even kept up with technology over the last 15 years. When you think about even adoption of cloud technology, right? They haven't adopted it because they can't make a decision. So, so that's the biggest problem. Now, this is good, I guess this is good or bad depending on who you are, right?
Yeah.
So the reality is the big firms are getting bigger, and the small firms will always be a place for small firms, because like there's always a place for them, but the middle's just going to go away. It's just going to go poof, because the big firms are going to get really big and the small firms are going to stay small, and everybody else is going to evaporate. They're either going to go out of business or they're going to get acquired by some big firm. And that's the reality. And I think that's the thing that maybe could keep them relevant, again, is if they figure out what this social media or what this AI strategy is maybe that gives them a little bit more relevance to stay around for a little bit longer. And it's not just AI, it's technology, it's kind of it's all the things that happen with change that, you know, keeps them relevant, so that they don't have to be acquired by some PE firm that's a big firm that is eating. I mean, like, you see the news, you like every other day, some new firm has been merged up. So
Yep. You know, that's exactly, you know, how the business runs. You know, we've seen this happening over and over again. You know, Facebook takes over Flickr and
right.
so forth, and then it takes over, Meta takes over WhatsApp, and yep. Well, you know, these challenges are going to continue to happen, but I'm pretty certain that you have been talking to so many people. So could it be possible for you to share some success stories or examples where firms have successfully integrated AI despite that initial resistance that had come?
Actual examples, I think it's more like firms that are like just using AI every day, and I would say that they don't know it's AI, or they're not thinking about it. Like, there are couple firms who have built like chatbots and stuff like that, but I don't think that's like the right place, or not that, but that's not, I think it's just the firm every day who's using, you know, technology like a bot keeper or a puzzle or something else, even like Sage Intact has AI built into it, right? Like all of these everyday things that I think are probably more common. If you think about who's doing development on AI, it's the really big firms, which, not to say it's not relevant, but it's not relevant probably to the majority of your audience, because the majority of your audience aren't like, they're not going to have engineers on staff who are going to do it, right? Probably the most practical example is, you know, a tax person who's using Ask Blue Jay, right? So Ask Blue Jay is it's tax research. It's kind of a chatbot, but it's very specific to tax. So you can ask it a really complex tax question, and it comes back with all your sites. And it also comes back with, like, you can say, create a memo for me or create an email, and it does that, right? So I would say that's probably the most practical example. Trulian is another one that is, they're on the audit side and audit advisory, right? Like they're turning contracts into workflows that then work with audit and like also like lease accounting, right? So that's another one. So I think it's less about AI and more about the tool that you're going to use to do your job. So like, again, you don't do AI, you use a tool that is going to do the job you do. And I think that's the way we need to think about it. Like, because it's not like you're going to, like in a firm, it's not like you're going to say, oh, I'm going to get AI to do it. That's probably not like, and you're not going to go buy an engineer to build that tool, right? That's probably not where most CPAs are. It's more like, I have a problem, and the problem I need to solve for is tax research. Now let me go look at the 2 or 3 tools that can help me do it, right? And I think that's the way we need to think about AI, is don't think about it as AI. Think about, I have a problem. I need a tool to solve that problem. Now go look at all the options that are out there and then pick that tool that solves your problem the best. Don't say like, I need to use AI. Like it,
No, absolutely, absolutely. Now let's bring everything together, why we are here. Let's looking ahead, what are the future developments do you foresee at the intersection of AI and pricing strategies in accounting?
so I think there's going to be something called an AI. Well, I'll call it myself. I'm making this up. I don't know. Maybe someone. It's an AI intern. So if you think about the tools and the things that you do that are rote and repetitive, and you think about what we wanted RPA to be, but like never really kind of successfully ended up. Like we talked a lot about RPA about 7 years ago, and it kind of like fell flat. But if you could put RPA and AI together, and I'm probably talking over some people's heads here, but if you could think of opportunity for an intern, where your intern would do all of this grunt work in your firm that you don't want to do, and now that's your AI intern, right? So like all the things that are repetitive in nature that are annoying to you or you don't want to do, wouldn't it be cool if you had this AI intern, I'll say, sitting in the cube next to you, doing all your work?
Yep.
Like to me, that's like kind of the future, and that's the excitement, right? But we're not there today. We're not, it's going to be years, maybe 2030. I don't know. Maybe that's too soon. But to me, that's like, and the thing about like, well, it's kind of funny because like you think about an intern, interns make mistakes, but they make them repetitively. Like you can teach an intern something, but then they're going to make a different mistake, and then they're going to make another mistake, right? But they're going to learn, but it's going to take them time, right? So if you think about this kind of AI intern or this bot that you're going to build, like you think, okay, how long will it take before it knows what to do for me and it stops making mistakes? Because like that's the issue with humans. But when you think about automation without AI, it makes the same mistake repetitively. Like, like if you get it automated to a certain point, maybe it'll get to that certain point and then it's gonna, but you always know, like it would make that same repeating mistake, right? Like, it's gonna get you. So I think the interesting thing about it is what's the combination of this AI intern and automation where it is smart enough that you trust it to get you to a certain point, and then you take it further. Because right now, all the AI that's out there that I've played with, it's there, but it's not there. You really have to like kind of double check it, and which again, it's still good. Like don't like discount it, but like what would that world be where like you trusted that AI intern so well that you knew it got you all the way to here, and then you just took it like it baked the cake and you just put the icing on it, and you were good with it. You didn't have to double check that the cake was like mixed right, and that there wasn't like it forgot the chocolate chips or something, right? Like,
Right.
Like that to me, that's like when are we going to get there? And when you think about bots, just so people who don't have the background, it takes a lot of data to train these bots. And how much data does it take, and how much learning does it take to get this AI intern to a place where you're going to be like, oh, this is my AI intern, and like, doesn't she do a great job?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Whenever everybody talks about AI, there's always this, especially with the accounting professionals, because I'm sure you must have heard a lot of people saying that, oh, it's going to take over jobs and everything. But I always say that, use this as a way to make it better for your lives, But so, and like, I mean, according to, like what skills or mindsets, what is the mindset or the skill set do you think these accounting professionals would need to adapt to prepare for these kind of changes that are coming in the industry?
So I think you have to put your creative hat on. And I think you have to think outside the box, because if you like doing bank recs are going to be gone. So if you get comfort in doing a bank rec, forget about it, right? Like, and I know sometimes like I like to do a bank rec because then it balances. You're like, oh, this is great, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of comforting, right?
Yeah.
But that's gone. Like just like I'll say in the old days, people used to write tax returns by hand, right? And then
Yeah.
tax software came. So like if those are the things that you like about accounting, like you're going to have to find something else to like kind of like,
Yeah.
because the automation and the tools are going to do that work. Now and I would argue that if you're not a first year accountant, you shouldn't be doing that work anyways, right? Or, early in your career, you shouldn't be doing that. But there are a lot of partners who like to do that work and they do it. They don't even pass it down, right?
Yeah.
So if like that's the work that automation is going to take away. But if you like to think about complex tax strategies, or if you like to think about anything with logic and reason and like a little bit creative, that's the opportunity, right? And also, like, who's going to audit all these AIs? That's what I was thinking about. Like, there's a whole new
Yeah.
opportunity there, right? Like,
Yes.
like who's going to like I'm sure the AICPA is going to be on it, right? But
Yes.
who's going to stamp their name saying
Yep.
like that this AI is solid and it's not hallucinating, right? That's
Yep.
when AI makes something up. That's what you say, that it's
Yeah.
hallucinating, right? So like there's got to be like a future for us to do other things, but again, we don't know what we don't know yet, and we just have to look at it with like this open open eyes and curiosity, and say, look, here's the opportunity. Let's figure it out.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just stepping back, and if I step back and I look at a bigger picture, how do you envision AI and radical pricing influencing the competitive dynamics in the accounting sector?
So again, I start with how do you build 2 minutes? How do you build 2 seconds? So if you don't figure out how to incorporate pricing into whatever it is you're selling, as AI being a component of it, you're never going to make any money. So I was at a session at Engage, and I was quite embarrassed by the question, but we'll just go with it. Someone asked that they were doing some sort of consulting, and it would normally take them 8 hours and it took them 2 because they used AI to help them. And they said, should they put AI on the bill? No, you don't put AI on the bill. And what are you going to bill AI at? $60 an hour or something? Like, I mean, how and then you're going to like multiply it by it's like 2 seconds. Like, no, you're not going to put AI on the bill. Like, so if you can't figure that out, that you need to charge on outcomes. First of all, read my
Yes.
book, I'll help you.
Yeah.
But that's that's the shift that has to happen. So AI is going to be an input, plus our professional knowledge that we have for years, plus our, data and whatever we've gathered. And whatever that deliverable is, we're going to charge a price for it. And it's not going to be based on the time spent. It's
Yep.
going to be based on, I would argue, you price your customer up front. Now, that's the difference between value pricing and value billing. Billing is after the fact.
Yes.
But even if you were to value bill, it's got to be better than putting AI $60 times 0.01 second. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense at all. It
it
doesn't.
doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
like we have to figure it out. And the good thing is I would argue that people have done it. They've figured it out. Like, you don't have to be the first one to figure it out. If you look at like my book, I'm not the only one. There are lots of firms out there who have kind of walked it. They've gone down the road. They've figured it out. They're not 100% there yet, but they're on their way. And you just got to start, because if you don't start, where are you going to be in a year? You're going to be in the same place. And the automation and the technology is only going to get faster and better. So like, it's just about like jumping off and getting started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jody, as we're approaching towards the end, in the closing, any final thoughts that you would like to share with our users?
It's a really exciting time to be a part of this profession and embrace it, and get excited about the fact that technology and all the things that are coming into the space are going to allow us to serve our clients better, go home on time, and make more money. And if that's not what everybody wants to do, I don't know why you're in business. So
Well, absolutely. And I think, I think the key thing you said is go home on time. I think AI, if at all, whatever resistance you have from AI, know that if AI can make you go home on time, embrace it right away,
absolutely.
All right, Jody, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. You've shared so many valuable insights that I'm sure our listeners will appreciate. All right. So, and to our listeners, if you want to explore these concepts further or learn more about Jody's work, be sure to check out her books and follow her on social media. Links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you all for tuning in to the podcast of We're Trying to Figure Out with Saul. Until next time, keep embracing innovation and pushing boundaries of what's possible in accounting. Goodbye and stay tuned for more. Cheers.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.